On today's Locked On Thunder podcast, can the Oklahoma City Thunder punch their ticket to the Western Conference Finals? What advantages do they have over the Dallas Mavericks?
You are Locked On Thunder, your daily Oklahoma City Thunder podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Let's get it going on the Locked On Thunder podcast on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I am your host, media member, and beat writer for InsideTheThunder.com, Rylan Stiles. Follow me on Twitter at Rylan_Stiles. On today's show, we're joined by the Podfather, the Athletic, the Dream Team host, Andrew Schlecht, at Andrew K. Schlecht on Twitter. You know him. You love him. He's a rock star, a screamo band leader. Andrew, how are you doing today?
I'm doing just fine, Rylan. Even better now that I'm on Locked On Thunder. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for making your epic return. You're the last time that you were here to preview a playoff series, the Thunder swept. I don't think that they're going to sweep again, but it was a fun time in New Orleans to see them sweep. What were your overall takeaways from round one?
Yeah, I was really just impressed with the Thunder in the closeout game. You know, they played lots of different kinds of games against the Pelicans, and just the ability to close that game out mentally, I thought showed a lot. And for it to be Josh Giddey that, helped them close it out was pretty impressive. So, I think there's definitely a lot of areas that could have been better, but, for them to sweep a team that they should have taken, they were going to beat that team. It was just like, is it going to be in 4 or 5? And the fact that they were able to close it out in 4 was pretty impressive.
Yeah, in a game 4 that was not trending their way for the majority of the game, and then they just had to turn it on, and then they went and got the game with like 2 minutes left, up double digits. But Josh Giddey was huge in games 3 and 4. It's interesting because, to this point in his career, he looks like a big game player similar to Lu Dort, but all of his big games have also happened to be against New Orleans. So it's tough to know if it's the New Orleans issue where he's just really good in New Orleans, or if he's like a big game player. Well, what is your vibe check on Josh Giddey heading into this series?
I think he's pretty important in this series just because the Mavs are going to have to match up in strange ways with the Thunder offensively, especially with Maxi Kleber out, who I think would have been a guy that played a lot in this series. And so now, what do you do with your big? I think there will be times that they did this earlier in the season where they put their bigs on Lou, and they'll put their bigs on, they'll put them on Josh because they can't match up with them and Chet. Like, they can't pull their guys away from the rim. And so they're just going to have to dare, these non-shooters, quote unquote, to beat them. And so I think that they'll probably do that with Josh to start the series would be my guess. And if Josh can make them pay, I think that this could be a shorter series than we think. If Josh struggles and his confidence wavers and you can't go to him and you have to go to the bench, which is not necessarily a bad thing, but it's just takes away one weapon, a guy that's really smart, that keeps your offense flowing. If you take him out of the series, I think it just makes things a little bit more complicated for the Thunder. So I think that he's really important. He's been playing very well lately, but it's when you get thrown into a playoff series where a team is going to probably say, we don't believe that you can beat us. We're going to make you prove it. How does he react to that? I think that that's kind of a really big factor in this going into the series.
I think that with Josh Giddey, he's been playing great since March 1st, and he was awesome in New Orleans, including after the first 2 games where he didn't shoot the ball particularly well. Then he goes and rattles off 4 threes in back-to-back games to close out the series in New Orleans. The biggest thing that he mentioned after the game 4 was just that he never lost that confidence, even when shots weren't falling, and just kind of trusted himself. That will be big. And I think that you're right about how the Mavericks are going to have to defend Oklahoma City, because I go back to the regular season, which is tough to draw from because they played 4 times, but none of the 4 times feel like they really matter in the grand scheme of things. But whenever they played on TNT the 3rd time, and it was just Kyrie, they didn't have Luka, but the way that they were defending the Thunder was that Josh Giddey actually played a really good game in the first half, but he still was played off the floor because you saw Jason Kidd lean into just leaving a big on him and leaving a big in the paint, which at that point, Josh Giddey then becomes a corner shooter, and that's just not his game typically, and that's really not fair to him to keep him out there as just a corner shooter from three. So I think that Jason Kidd's willingness to do that, even when Josh is having a good game, is something that might indicate that he's going to do this the entire time, the entire series, and we'll see if Josh Giddey can act like this is the Smoothie King Center on Tuesday and go and light up threes for OKC. But I think that will be one of the biggest questions entering round two.
Yeah, without a doubt. It's a big one. It's an X factor. When we talk about X factors, there's factors and there's X factors, and I think this is definitely one of them.
How did X get so lucky to be the factor?
I don't know.
Mark? Where's the Y factor at?
Oh, there's Y factors and everything, man. Like why?
The slope.
The Y's of life.
Y equals MX plus B, Andrew. Now, with round two, first time since 2016. What were you doing in 2016, Andrew?
Was I doing in 2016? I was teaching out at Whitefields here in Piedmont, Oklahoma. I was doing down to dunk. I had 2 kids by that time. So just, living my life, man.
Wow. Congrats on getting busy. But whatever, I was in high school in 2016. It was really fun to watch this Thunder team advance to the second round. And they, of course, went to the conference finals in 2016, which ended up in heartbreak. Maybe they can go to the conference finals again this season if they can get past the pesky Dallas Mavericks. With Lu Dort, obviously he stole the show in round one. Mm-hmm. And he dominated Brandon Ingram and really just made Brandon Ingram quit wanting to play basketball for the series. I can't really blame him. He didn't have much help, and just Lu Dort is frustrating, and you knew you weren't going to win the series anyway, but he legit just quit and just stopped even trying to get shot attempts up. That's not going to happen for Lu Dort and Luka, but Luka also has credited Lu Dort as like a top 3 defender, which whenever you look at defending Luka, Lu Dort, similarly to Brandon Ingram, fits that perfect mold of how you stop them. Like Brandon Ingram doesn't like when guys are playing up under him. For Luka, he doesn't really like whenever guys are physical with him, especially if refs are going to let the physical play go. And you see in the playoffs all the time, the playoff physicality is like the biggest narrative that there is. So it trends like the refs are going to let that physicality go. While Luka's not going to hold, Lu's not going to hold Luka to like 15 points or anything like that. How confident are you in his ability to defend Luka?
Yeah, I mean, he'll defend him. He'll be there and he will irritate him for sure. Luka it's really interesting because a lot of it's going to come down to like how healthy is he? Because he's not 100%. Like that's for sure. And there was a particular play, and I mentioned this on Down to Dunk the other night. I think it was in game 5. That he was just kind of unwilling to like get on the floor and like dive for the basketball, which has been something that he's done a lot this year. And I think it's because of his knee. Like he just does not want to get in the mix like that. It hasn't stopped him from like being his like deliberate self, but like the little extra things that you get from him, you weren't getting those in round 1. And so I wonder what that looks like. And with him, slowed down just like a little bit because he just didn't shoot the ball well. He was a lot of front rim, shots. His lift isn't there. You wonder, adding somebody who's actually going to fight over screens, because the Clippers were just switching everything. Like they would allow the switch to happen just right away. And so you just wonder with a team that does not, Lu just doesn't allow those switches to happen. The Mavs might be better screen setters than the Pelicans were, which could definitely change a little bit of, Lu's coverage. But I think he's going to do a good job. I think that a lot of this is going to come down to like how healthy is Luka. Like these few days, like give him enough chance to kind of get enough rehab so that he can be better than he was in round 1. I think that to me is maybe even a bigger question, like how well does Lu do? Because it just may not even matter. Because like Luka, with talking about how he's not played well, whatever, like he still averaged what was it, 30 something per game? Like, he was really good still. And so you just wonder, like, how much does that matter? I think it's more just like, how healthy is he? Because I just don't know that you can't stop him. So you just like hope to slow him down, and you hope that, like, you don't hope that he's injured, but if he is injured, I think it'll just be a little bit easier. So yeah, and I know that Luka's like average a triple double against Lu Dort in his career. I don't know what to do with that. None of it has been in the intensity of a playoff series. So I think that there's a lot to learn in game one, I guess is what I'm trying to say, because he averaged 29.8 points per game, 8.8 boards, 9.5 assists per game in a series where it was like, yeah, but he didn't play very well. And it's like, all right. But like, where he didn't play well is that he took 25 shots per game to get the 29 points, 40% from the field, 23% from three. If that's what he is, I think the Thunder have a pretty good chance of moving on. If he can only shoot 23% from three he took 11 threes a game, 11. If he's only making 2 of 11, I think that you have a pretty good shot of moving on to the Western Conference Finals.
Whenever you see the Lu Dort Luka matchups, I think that you're right, and Luka is just so impressive offensively that you're not going to stop him. Really, there is no Luka stopper. You just hope that you can provide a little bit of an extra speed bump, a little bit of a deterrence at times to make life hard on him. But ultimately, Luka is one of the best scorers that we've seen, and that'll continue in this series, even if he is banged up. Which his knee is at that weird spot that you see players get to at times where there's no getting better. You just have to play through it. And with that being the case, and the fact that this series is every other day for the first 5 games, then you get 2 days off between 5 and 6, then it's another every other day between game 6 and 7. That can be really tough if this series goes long and wears on Luka and wears on the Mavericks, especially with Lu Dort defending him. I think that the biggest thing that I would look at if I was Oklahoma City is having Lu Dort fight through every screen and stick on Luka as much as possible, because I think that living with Lu defending Luka and J-Dub and Kaysen and whoever else defending Kyrie, like living with the results of those matchups while staying home on their role players and complementary players, I think will be the best thing for the Thunder long term, because their role players cannot really create for themselves. A lot of them are just stationary around the 3-point line or being put in pick and roll action. And so I'd rather just see the Thunder, stay home on these non-creators who can't get their own looks and not allow them to get hot, because no matter what you do, like no matter how much help you send to Luka or Kyrie, they're bound to hit tough shots. They're bound to put up points. So if you make sure that you limit everyone else, then it really helps you limit the Mavericks offense as a whole.
Yeah, it's true. That is way easier said than done.
For sure.
This is really tough. This is an offense that is shaken loose, against the Thunder many a time. And so I wonder, one, like, what lessons can you learn from the regular season matchups? And then how do the Thunder, because part of the Thunder's deal is like they like to pack the paint, and then they give up a ton of corner threes just because of the way that they play defense. And the Mavs love to kick it to the corner. Like that's their bread and butter. It's like getting in the mid range, and if we don't have a shot, then we kick it to the corner. And they just believe that their guys are going to make shots. And I think there's going to be some blowouts in this series. I think there's going to be games where those corner threes aren't falling for the Mavs, and then I think there's going to be games where like 70% of them fall. And so this could be kind of like a blowout city back and forth. I could see that happening just with the volatility of just like the corner 3-point shooters in general.
PJ Washington and the rest of the shooters. Tim Hardaway Jr. might be coming back. He was practicing for the Mavericks on Sunday. We'll see if he's back. He's a guy that can obviously catch fire from 3. The Thunder for sure are going to give up corner threes, and it's for sure going to be frustrating for most people, but it's what's gotten them this far. It's what's gotten them 57 wins. So we'll see how it fares in the playoffs in round 2. What are some of the big advantages for the Thunder and disadvantages for the Thunder in this series, all coming up? But first, I want to say right now, but our good friends over at BetterHelp, Andrew. Sometimes we can all get some things off of our chest, and really, we don't want to let things fester and stew, big or small. And certain things can really start to get to you. So it's important to let it out, Andrew, especially to someone who's unbiased in your life that is not just going to tell you what you want to hear and help you make sound decisions. So today, go and tell people how you really feel at BetterHelp, because BetterHelp's awesome. It's the benefits of therapy with licensed therapists that are there for you 24/7, suited around your schedule, completely online. I think a lot of people, at times see that they could benefit from therapy, but just use the excuse of not enough time in your busy, busy life. That's why BetterHelp's great. It's entirely online, designed to be flexible and suited around your schedule. Visit betterhelp.com/LockedInNBA to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/LockedInNBA to get 10% off of your first month. We're back on the Lockdown Thunder podcast, on the Lockdown Podcast Network, your teams every day. Here with the Athletics, Andrew Schlecht. You've heard him before on Down to Dunk. OKC Dream Team, Thunder After Dark edition as well. Everything in the world you've heard Andrew Schlecht on, really. The radio, Twitter. I'm sure you've done, Periscopes before in your life, maybe.
Yes. Yeah, I used to do some Periscopes for sure.
Used to be scoping it up. Just everything. Everything.
Yeah.
Andrew, as the podfather who's seen it all, you've seen a lot of playoff series. When you look at this playoff series, what are some big advantages for OKC over the Mavericks?
I think one of the advantages they have is that they can just play the same way throughout the entire game. And that's something that's pretty unique about the Thunder. Some of it's going to really just depend on, can J-Dub keep this up, And I think it's going to be interesting because the Mavericks just don't have the same quality of perimeter defenders that the Pelicans did. And so I'm just really curious to see who the matchups are and how they fare, because I think obviously Derek Jones Jr. is going to defend Shai, but then it's who is defending Dub, and I think that's going to be very interesting. Is it PJ Washington? Is it Luka or Kyrie? Who is it? Because we talked about the big being on Giddey, but I think a major advantage for the Thunder is whoever's guarding J-Dub could get just cooked all series. And if I'm the Thunder, I am looking to him and saying hey, we need you to carry a large load in this series. We need you to be, one of our highest shot takers in this league. You've got to get to a lot of threes. You got to get to the hoop. You're faster than PJ Washington. You're bigger than Kyrie Irving. They don't have a great matchup for him. And so to me, that's going to be one of the big advantages that they have. And I don't think you're going to put Luka on him just because you don't want Luka in foul trouble. Luka's had the tendency to get in early foul trouble in games. And so I don't think that they want Luka on him. And then I just wonder who it is and how they fare. I think it's going to be PJ. I would guess it's PJ Washington. And he's a little bit slower than you'd want the defender for J-Dub to be. And so that to me is going to be a big one.
PJ Washington, they call him in Dallas. So we'll see if he can put J-Dub in jail. I don't think that he'll be able to, which is a very good thing for OKC. You mentioned Luka in foul trouble. I think that another big advantage for OKC would be being able to play kind of a 5-out offense while bringing whoever Luka's on, whether it's Lu or Josh or whoever they put him on, bring him to the ball and get him to switch onto Shai. And while he did play, better than expected defense against the Clippers, and he has been overall way better defensively and more engaged defensively this year. So credit to Luka. You also saw in that Clippers series that if he gets in foul trouble, he just cannot play defense anymore, because you'd much rather give up James Harden floater after James Harden floater than you would have him get fouled out of the game and just lose him for the contest. So I think that when you look at Shai, it's a very good matchup to get him on Luka, because either it's a guaranteed bucket or Luka's going to have to foul him and get in foul trouble, and then he's just irrelevant on the defensive end because you don't want to see him exit the game. So I think that the Thunder's ability to get whatever switch that they want to, which comes from their regular season of going out all in on guard-to-guard screening. And, of course, what Shaq can do as a screener. No matter who you put Luka on, you can bring him to the ball and you can get him on, J-Dub or Shai and really benefit from there.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. I cannot wait to see how that all works out.
We're not far away from seeing how it all works out. I think that another big advantage for OKC is just their defenders that they can throw at the Mavericks. It's not going to be, perfect, but you're scratching your head to figure out who in the world is even going to attempt to guard J-Dub. You at least have guys who are going to attempt to guard Kyrie and Luka. Those guys are still going to shake loose and get tough buckets and put up huge monster stat lines. But the quality of players that you can throw at them, I think, is better than the quality of defenders you can throw at OKC. I think that they do a good job of defending as a team and communicating very well. But that's easier against the Clippers, who are very stagnant and very, isolating, if you want to say, offensively, versus the Thunder, who are constantly moving, who are constantly cutting, who are constantly, putting you in ball screens and things like that. So I think that defensively, the battle leans OKC.
Yeah, I think that's right. And if you look at the matchup where the Thunder got completely blown out in Dallas, like the guys that played the most off the bench were Casey Wallace and Aaron Wiggins. And I'm curious to see if that's the case in this one too, because those are obviously Casey Wallace is a great defender. Wiggins provides a little bit of length and a little bit of scoring there. I wonder, what the rotations look like. Does Kenrich Williams, get more minutes in this series? What does the rotation look like? Do we see Gordon Hayward in this series? I think that the Thunder have guys like even Isaiah Joe, I think, has become a better defender. If like those are like your three main guys off the bench, I think like you can just continue to provide defense in waves, And some of this too is like how does Josh Giddey defend? I thought he defended very well in some of the games against the Pelicans, but if he's not defending well, I think you have to probably have a quick trigger to just pull him and put in Kenrich or put in Casey Wallace, because if not, like some of these guys are going to torch you. And so I think that the Thunder do have what it takes to defend this team, and I want to see how Mark uses them. I want to see how Mark uses particularly some of the bench pieces and some of the ways that he matches up.
Yeah, I like the Kenrich Williams call. I wrote for SI yesterday that the rotation could swing back to Kenrich Williams in this series, because if Josh Giddey is not hitting his corner threes throughout the season, that Kenrich has actually been really good shooting corner threes. So if he can hit corner threes and loosen up the clogged up lane from Dallas on the other end, he can give you a ton of defensive physicality for his size. He's, of course, is a better defender, no offense to Josh Giddey, than Josh Giddey, and pitch you on the boards as well. So like what you lose from Giddey on the glass, you can kind of make up for by plugging in Kenrich Williams, especially with how he can help rough up Lively and Gatford, who I think that one of them will always be on the floor for Dallas. So you're always going to need some of that help inside, which Kenrich can do. But I think that you're right. It's going to be a lot on Mark, and it's going to be a lot on him having the quick chess moves with the little clock that you hit in chess. I think that's like you get more points maybe for like going faster. I don't know how chess works, but he's got to hit that clock, man. I mean, if things are going awry, you got to hit the clock, move the pawn.
You're not like LeBron?
No, I'm not like LeBron, sadly, in any way.
You don't play chess? I play chess. I don't play chess, but
you're a chessman.
But I play chess. I bet LeBron doesn't know what that clock is for either.
Yeah, I don't know if it's just like there for looks or what. I mean, people just slam on that clock, and I imagine that like you might get bonus points for making your move in a timely manner.
Yeah, get ghost points for every time you hit the clock.
Every time you hit that clock. But Mark's got to hit that rotation, and he's got to really hit the right buttons. And I think that he will. I think that my other big advantage for the Thunder is coaching. I know Jason Kidd just signed an extension. I know Jason Kidd's brought the Mavericks to the Western Conference Finals, but I fully believe that the Thunder have the better coach on the sidelines in this series.
Yeah, I think so too. I think Mavericks fans would also agree with you. I wonder. I haven't really checked the Twitterverse or Reddit to see how Mavs fans feel about this extension, but I know there were large portions of the fan base that wanted him gone. during a lot of during like the mid part of this season. And so I'm curious how that plays out. But yeah, I think Mark did great in round one. And as the series goes on, like how quickly is he making adjustments? What are the adjustments? I think that it's going to be key. I actually think that coaching is going to be big in this series, and just the ability to, push the right buttons when you need to, I think is going to be crucial. Obviously, it's just like battle between Shai and Luka that I think will also be big. Like I think Shai needs to be like better than he was in round one. I'll just say that. But I think the coaching matchup is going to be crucial. And I believe in Mark. I believe in his ability to make adjustments and for him to do what's right for the team. And it's going to be fun to watch. I think it's going to be fun to see game to game, like what little changes that he makes. Because I think there's going to be more strategy in this series than there was in the previous one.
There will be certainly more strategy than it was against New Orleans, where it felt like the Thunder could just roll out of bed and beat the Pelicans. Coming up, what are some of the disadvantages of this series for OKC? Where can the Mavericks thrive? And who's going to win this Western Conference semifinal? But first one's here right now, but good friends over at DoorDash. Check out DoorDash, Andrew. You might be thinking to yourself that you know what DoorDash is. You know what they can accomplish for you. And sure, they can bring you out a little late night sweet treat, Andrew, if that's what you're into. They can help you. You got all those kids, Andrew. You've been getting busy. Maybe you don't feel like cooking dinner tonight. And they can bring you dinner. But Andrew, did you know in the hustle and bustle of the playoffs on Sunday after we road trip down to Dallas, it's Mother's Day. You have many a mother. You not only have a mother, but your wife's a mother. Maybe you've forgotten to get her a present. We'll keep that on the Circle of Trust tree here. Hopefully, your wife isn't. Hopefully, your wife is not listening. If you did forget to get her a present, but if you did, worry not, because DoorDash can actually bring you out flowers in a surprise gift for her.
Oh wow!
And here's my trick, Andrew. I've been telling people, DoorDash can bring you out these like gifts. The heady play here is if you really did forget and you need to order a Mother's Day gift on Mother's Day from DoorDash, you tell your mother of choice that this was always the plan. I ordered it online. I thought it was going to get delayed, but what a Mother's Day miracle from the Mother's Day fairy. It's here right on cue, right on time. And that's what they can do at DoorDash. So go there right now because they're awesome. Because 50% off of your next order, up to $15 when you spend $15 or more on your next order for flower arrangements from the convenience store, grocery store, retail stores. Order right now using code LOCKEDONNBA. That's LOCKEDONNBA using DoorDash today. Terms, of course, apply as always. We're back with the many mother Andrew Schlecht, Podfather himself. Andrew, whenever you look at this series, I think that one of the biggest disadvantages is inexperience, but not quite in the way that people are going to like say in just a raw age. I don't think that the Thunder will combust down the stretch of games. They've never done that. But there is the question of like, you're playing two guys who absolutely have hit massive shots down the stretch of playoff games. Kyrie's done it in the NBA Finals. Luka, from the time he walked into the playoffs in the bubble, has hit massive buzzer beater game winners. And so the Thunder are going to have to prove that they can also rise to the occasion in that spot. To this point, every time that they've had the opportunity to rise to the occasion, they've done it, and they've done it tremendously. They've won 57 games in the toughest Western Conference we've ever seen. So I don't think that they can't do it. I don't think that they won't do it, but they just have to go do it.
Yeah, I do think like that is going to be it's not necessarily, like you said, a disadvantage. It's just like strategy wise, like those guys are tough shot makers. And Kyrie was amazing in round one against Clippers. Like he looks really good. We talked about how Luka doesn't look like himself. Well, Kyrie looks great. And he's a player that I think that is made for this moment. And he's been a distraction for a good half decade. And this season he hasn't been. He's been not only great on the court, but off the court. He's made life pretty easy for the Mavericks. And so that to me is definitely a disadvantage where like the Thunder haven't had a chance to make their moments yet. Like this could be, the series where it's like, oh my gosh, like Shai and J-Dub are just hitting massive shot after massive shot down the stretch of like very important playoff games, and it, advantage Thunder. Like that could happen. But we have seen it. Like we've seen Luka do it. We've seen Kyrie do it. And there's no doubts, in the minds of Jason Kidd or their teammates that like that's where they're going. And for the Thunder, I think we know it's Shai, but we've seen Shai hit, big time shots in the regular season, but this is just a different animal. And so I'm curious to see what that looks like as well. I think another disadvantage for the Thunder is just like the pick and roll creation that the Mavericks have, where their bigs, they can play the same way the whole time. They've got two guys that basically play like very similar roles in Gafford and Lively, and those guys are springy. They're really good screen setters, and they roll quick. I think the Thunder did a good job of guarding Valanciunas. But Valanciunas is like this big lumbering guy who is like going to beat you by brute force. The Mavericks are big and can beat you by brute force, but also with quickness, which is just going to be different. And how Chet defends, like can Chet defend without fouling, I think is going to be a big one. He has all season. I think he only fouled out one time. So it's not like this has been like a big issue for Chet. But keeping Chet out of foul trouble, I think, is going to be big because I just wonder a little bit about J. Will in this series, playing against these guys that are really good in the pick and roll. Is he going to be a guy that can play in the drop? Like they're going to need to. I don't know. That's not really his style, and so I'm curious to see what that looks like. And I think Chet needs to play big minutes for this team. Like he's going to have to play 38 to 44 minutes a game, I think. And if he can stay on the court, I think the Thunder have a really good chance of winning the series. But the fact that you can keep these two bigs fresh throughout the series, because you can play them both like 25 minutes a game or whatever, like they're going to be in a good spot, I think, from the big position. And so how do the Thunder defend that pick and roll specifically? And how do they stop the lobs? Because that's going to be a huge weapon for the Mavericks, and one that Luka and Kyrie, like the Thunder struggle to throw lobs. They maybe could learn a thing or two from Kyrie and from Luka in the way that they throw lobs to Gafford and Lively.
Yeah, the pick and roll is going to be very, very scary for Oklahoma City. Luka's like a 93rd percentile pick and roll guy. Kyrie, 84th percentile pick and roll ball handler. And when you look at the matchup, it's going to be tough because it puts your big in such a tough position because you want to hedge and you want to make sure that you're giving enough attention to the ball handler, but then that puts you a step behind the roller who is going to get spoon-fed buckets. Now, Chet is a unique, defender because he can get blocks from behind with his great timing and length, but there's also going to be times where they're just going to get easy buckets, and it's just going to happen. I think that whenever you look at this series, the disadvantage, of course, the pick and roll and the proven tough shot making of Dallas. I think that you can also see from a Maverick standpoint is that the unknown aspect of a disadvantage. I think Luka and Kyrie and Jason Kidd, like they've all been in this spot before, whereas the Thunder have never been in this spot. So like you played 4 games. I don't think any of them matter. Like I don't think that the one game that they had Luka and Kyrie where they won by 35 points, I don't think that the Mavericks are 35 points better than OKC. Like that was just a wild game on a Saturday afternoon back whenever, as you remember, Andrew, the biggest storyline of the season was, why can't the Thunder win in the afternoon? Are they like werewolves? The sun's up. They just can't play. What's going on? So I don't think that was a good sample size. Every other sample size does not include both Kyrie and Luka, which is not a good sample size at all. And of the 2 games you played post trade deadline, where the 3 games you played post trade deadline, there was that random afternoon game. There was the no Luka game whenever it was on TNT and the Thunder won, late. And there was the last game of the year where literally nobody played for Dallas and the Thunder just dominated them. So like the fact that you have nothing to go off of after playing a team 4 times, I think favors Dallas out of the chute a little bit before the Thunder can kind of get their bearings about them and quickly evaluate how they need to defend and how they need to play this really new look Mavs team from where they were from game one, of this 4-game set where you withstand a 30-0 run from Dallas and win to where they are now.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. The regular season games, I think you could just throw them out. It was such a weird series in the regular season between these two teams that they felt like all outliers in some ways, with the injuries and then the blowouts, and it was just very, very odd. And so I think I think Mark will love that they're just at 0-0,
0-0 mentality, stacking
Yeah.
days.
The guy loves to be at 0-0.
I mean, his favorite game of the year has to be game one.
Game one
of the year.
Like
Game one of
you
82.
literally are 0-0. Or preseason.
Oh,
They don't you're just 0-0.
they don't even count.
Oh, it's beautiful. There's
Every
not-
game, you literally look up at your record and it's still just 0-0, 0-0. Should the Thunder, as an ode to the Thunder, like should they, whenever they announce like the lineups or whatever, I don't even know if they put the records up there. We've been to every game for the last 2 years and don't know if they put the records up there. But if they do, just put it 0-0.
0-0.
A mental trick.
Yeah. Where are we?
And should opposing teams like start flashing the Thunder's record, like you're not 0-0, you're 57 and whatever. Tactical warfare, Andrew.
Maybe that's like some trash talk from Jason Kidd, where he just like tells them what their record is.
Yeah, what if Jason Kidd just comes to the podium, Andrew? And they do it weird in the playoffs where the both coaches go in the same room and they go right after each other. And when we're all like curious to talk to Jason Kidd, and he sits down and he goes, "Yeah, we've got to have a 50-32 mindset. That's what's got us here. 50 wins. We really got to get in there and play like a 50-win team."
It's like, what? What's going on here? I think another disadvantage for the Thunder is they haven't lost a game since April 5th. It has been over a month since they've lost a game. And that first loss is going to hit like a ton of bricks. I obviously, like, you'd rather win than lose. Like, you can't be like, man, you guys should have lost games. It's not that. It's just that a loss is coming. Like, I don't think the Thunder are going to sweep the Dallas Mavericks in round 2. I don't think that's happening. So a loss is coming. And so that first loss is just gonna hit real hard for fans. And I think that Mark has to, and I think he'll do this, but you just have to be ready, for when that loss comes, because it's on its way. It's coming, Thunder fans. Like, get ready for that first loss, because it's gonna feel like just the sky's falling, I think.
It will. And how will the Thunder like handle the emotional gaps of the series, as Mark says, whenever you do suffer your first playoff loss, and then it feels like, oh no, now Luka and Curry have to win now 3 games. Now they only have to win 2 games. Now Luka and Curry only need to win 1 game, as talented as this duo is. And so like that can really wear on you. I think that the Thunder actually got a little bit of a break whenever you factor in that they play every other day, because now there's not enough time to like freak out. Really.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. And you also have to even reference like the Mavericks first round series, where they got just housed in game 1 against the Clippers. And it looked like, oh gosh, what's going to happen here? And they end up winning in 6. Like, if you predict the Thunder to win in 6, just be aware you're predicting the Thunder to lose 2 games. If you're predicting the Thunder in 7, you're predicting they lose 3 games, which I think people have a hard time. Like, the people will pick it, like, yeah, Thunder in 6. I asked people on Twitter last night, like, who's winning the series and how many games. Thunder in 6 was like the most popular answer. It's like, just be aware. They're gonna, if that's what you think is gonna happen, and it does happen, they're losing 2 of these games. Like, they have, in order for you to be correct, they have to lose 2. And so it's gonna feel different. I think this is gonna be fun. The emotions are gonna be high, and they're gonna be all over the place.
It's gonna be fun. And then turn all this off where it's only you and me talking, Andrew, and no one else is listening. It's going to be terrible also, because we've been there for the losses to like Charlotte, where the fan base, like the Thunder's own fan base, is like having a referendum on the team because they lost a random game in Detroit. And like, it's just losing a playoff game. They're going to go completely wild, and it's just going to be unbelievable. But anyway, back to where everyone can hear us now. That was a circle of trust moment. I think that when you look at the series, one of the other storylines I'm watching for is the crowds. I think that both crowds are fantastic. I think that the Thunder feed off of it very well to this point, and like the players are still young and they think it's so cool and they love it. Whereas like the Mavericks, the Kyrie storyline, he's been perfect in Dallas. Like he's been awesome this season. No ruffling of feathers. The one time that feathers were plucked were in OKC whenever he got into it with fans, like over a regular season game on TNT. Luka Doncic is Mr. Technical Foul over there. Yep. And we've mentioned how physical that Lu Dort's going to play, and we mentioned how the whistle might get swallowed and how the fan base, listen, you complain to the ref during a stoppage and this Thunder crowd's going to boo you. How do you stop yourself from getting in the midst of this series, Andrew? That's what I want to know. So like was if there is tight games in this series and Luka has a technical foul and you give away a point, that sounds really dumb right now, but it could turn the tide of a series.
Yeah, I just want to encourage. I think when I came on to preview the Pelican series, I kind of challenged the Thunder fans to show up and do it again, Thunder fans, because I do think the home court advantage could be a real factor in this series. And if we can get in the heads of Luka and Kyrie, as they're kind of like frustrated, like obviously these guys are going to get frustrated. Like that's going to happen in this series. And if the Thunder fans can be a factor in this one, it could be huge. I just hope they continue to show up. I think they will, and like bring the intensity that they did in the first, 2 games that we saw. We've only had 2 playoff games in Oklahoma City, so far, and they were both very memorable. And so I think if Thunder fans can continue to just bring it like they have, I think that could be a huge factor, in this one. And I also think the Mavs fans are going to be a factor too, because you were there. The New Orleans crowd was not like the Thunder crowd.
That was terrible.
Yeah, and I think the Mavs fans are going to be much better. And
I've heard more like crowd reaction from the pews of a Southern Baptist church than I did at the playoff game of the Women's Pelicans.
That's so weird, huh?
That was just awful.
Yeah,
I was telling John Hamm on the Dream Team, like, you also wouldn't have known that like the Pelicans were even in the playoffs whenever you were there, like walking around the arena, walking around like the city of New Orleans, walking around Bourbon Street, which Bourbon Street, you're not going to know where you are anyway. But anywhere else in the city, there was no signage of like, good luck Pelicans, like Pelicans playoffs, like NOLA playoffs, like none of it. And maybe that just stems from like in Oklahoma, we just care so much about our team, like because it's like our team, like our community, whatever. But like it was just weird. It was a culture shock. Like no one cares around here that the Pelicans are like in the playoffs.
Yeah, it's so sad. Like honestly, that's just kind of sad. That's just very strange.
Yeah, and you did just to reiterate, you did not just simply challenge the fan base. You said that they were awful and wouldn't show up to game 1 and 2 of the series, and they proved you wrong, Andrew. You've not been wrong very often, but they proved you wrong.
I was glad to be proven wrong. Very glad to be proven wrong.
That was a great series. That was a great crowd. This is going to be a fun series. Are we going to get you down I-35, Andrew?
Oh yeah, I'll be there game 3 for sure.
Woo-hoo-hoo-hoo. Game 3, Andy, coming at you from the American Airlines Center. Follow him on Twitter at Andrew K. Schlecht, the Athletic Podcast Network, Down to Dunk, the Athletic NBA Show, OKC Dream Team, everything. What did I miss, Andrew?
Oh, that's good. That's it. Do all that stuff.
Do all the stuff. As words of encouragement from Andrew Schlecht, who is the most responsible person I've ever talked to on this show. Until next time, be good and be good to one another.